Rodeo ain't for the faint of heart. It's a wild, adrenaline-pumping sport where cowboys and cowgirls risk life and limb for glory. But sometimes things go horribly wrong. We're talking bone-crushing wrecks, split-second disasters, and moments that left entire arenas gasping in shock. Whether it's a bull turning savage, a bronco bucking into chaos, or an unexpected freak accident, the rodeo has seen its fair share of brutal mishaps. So, strap in, because we're diving into the 5 worst rodeo accidents of all time. It was July 30th, 1989, a day that would forever be etched into rodeo history. The Cheyenne Frontier Days finals were in full swing, the crowd roaring with anticipation as one of the sport's brightest stars prepared for his next ride. Lane Frost, just 25 years old, was already a legend, a world champion bull rider with a fearless spirit, a magnetic personality, and a future that seemed limitless. But no one in that arena could have known they were about to witness his final ride. Lane was born on October 12, 1963, in Lane, Oklahoma, raised in the heart of rodeo country. His father, Clyde, was a cowboy, but young Lane didn't take to the sport immediately. Something changed along the way, though. And once the fire was lit, there was no stopping him. By the late 80s, he had become one of the most electrifying names in rodeo. In 1987, he reached the peak of his career, winning the World Championship. The following year, he accomplished the impossible, conquering Red Rock, a bull that had never been successfully ridden for the full 8 seconds. Lane wasn't just a competitor. He was an icon, a hero to fans, and a friend to his fellow riders. But fate had other plans. That July day in 1989, the Wyoming sky hung heavy and gray, the air thick with the scent of damp dirt. Lane was up against a powerful, unpredictable bull named Taking Care of Business. As the gate flew open, Lane held firm, riding with the same unshakable confidence that had made him a champion. The crowd erupted as he made the 8-second mark, earning an impressive 85 points. But in rodeo, the danger doesn't end with the whistle. As Lane dismounted, disaster struck. He landed awkwardly in front of the bull. In a split second, the beast lunged forward, its horn striking Lane's ribs with devastating force. He stumbled, tried to regain his footing, then collapsed face first into the Wyoming dirt. The arena fell into a stunned silence. Dr. Skip Ross, the first responder, rushed to his side, but the injuries were catastrophic. A broken rib had punctured Lane's heart. For 90 desperate minutes, medical personnel fought to save him, but it was too late. Lane Frost, the cowboy who had stared down death time and time again, was gone. His death sent shockwaves through the rodeo world. His closest friends, including Cody Lambert and Tuff Hedeman, were devastated. Determined to honor his friend's memory, Cody created something that would change the sport forever. The protective vest that is now a standard in bull riding, a life-saving innovation born from tragedy. But Lane's legacy didn't end there. His story inspired a new generation of riders. J.B. Mauney, one of the greatest bull riders of all time, has often credited Lane as one of his biggest influences. His life was immortalized in the 1994 film 8 Seconds, with Luke Perry bringing his story to the big screen and introducing his legend to an even wider audience. For those who were there that day, for those who heard the gasp of the crowd and watched a legend fall, the memory of Lane Frost will never fade. His story is one of triumph and tragedy, of a man who lived fearlessly and rode until the very end. And in the heart of every bull rider who steps into the arena, Lane still rides on. It was 1995 in Las Vegas, a night that would go down in rodeo history for all the wrong reasons. Inside the MGM Grand, the energy crackled with anticipation. Thousands of fans packed the arena, waiting to witness a battle between man and beast. but they had no idea they were about to see one of the most terrifying moments the sport had ever known. Tough Hedeman, a name that struck both respect and awe in the rodeo world, was at the peak of his career. A three-time world champion, fearless and relentless, he had faced the toughest bulls and always found a way to come out on top. But this night, his opponent wasn't just any bull, it was Bodacious. The name alone sent chills down the spine of every bull rider. Bodacious was no ordinary animal, he was a monster, a living nightmare wrapped in muscle and fury. Nicknamed the world's most dangerous bull, he was notorious for his explosive power and a deadly trick up his sleeve. Instead of just bucking riders off, Bodacious had mastered a devastating move, launching them forward, only to whip his massive head up at the last second, slamming his skull into their faces with bone-shattering force. No rider had ever walked away from him unscathed. Tough knew what he was up against. He had drawn Bodacious in the short go-round, and the entire arena buzzed with nervous excitement. They knew this was more than just a ride, it was a showdown. A war between an unstoppable cowboy and an untamed beast. As Hedeman climbed onto the bull, gripping his rope tightly, he leaned forward, trying to stay ahead of Bodacious's lethal moves. The chute gate burst open, and then disaster. Bodacious exploded out, twisting violently, and before Hedeman could react, the bull snapped his head up with horrifying precision. The impact was brutal. A sickening crack echoed through the arena as Bodacious's skull slammed into Hedeman's face. The crowd gasped. Some screamed. Others stood frozen in shock. Hedeman crumpled to the dirt. Blood poured from his face, pooling beneath him. The sheer force of the hit had obliterated nearly every bone in his face. His cheekbones were shattered, his nose broken, his jaw barely holding together. And yet, in a moment that defied all logic, Hedeman did the unthinkable. He stood up. His face was a mess of blood and agony, his vision blurred, but pure adrenaline carried him forward. He refused to be carried out. Instead, he walked out of the arena on his own 2 feet. A warrior who had just survived an encounter with death itself. Only later, as he lay on a gurney, did the full extent of his injuries become clear. The doctors who examined him were stunned. At first, they thought he had been shot. His face required 2 grueling surgeries, 13 hours under the knife, and 6 titanium plates just to hold the bones together. The pain was unbearable, the recovery long and brutal. He lost 25 pounds, and when his young son Lane saw him, he didn't recognize his own father. Only the sound of his voice confirmed that the broken man before him was still Tough Hedeman. And yet, incredibly, this wasn't even his first brush with near death. In 1993, he had been temporarily paralyzed after a brutal fall at the National Finals Rodeo. That injury had cost him an entire season, but in 1995 he came roaring back, ranking 3rd in the world. Even after his face had been destroyed, he refused to quit. Just 6 weeks after his surgery, Hedeman was back in Las Vegas for the National Finals Rodeo. The pain was still fresh, but so was his determination. He rode 5 of the 10 bulls he faced, a feat that would have been impossible for anyone else. And then, in the 5th round, fate tested him once more. He drew Bodacious. The arena fell silent. Every eye was on him. Would he dare to climb on the bull that had nearly ended his life? As the chute opened, Bodacious charged out, alone. Hedeman had made his decision. He would not ride. The crowd erupted, not in disappointment but in respect. They understood. They had seen the carnage, the brutality of what Bodacious could do, and they knew that sometimes even the toughest cowboys had to make the hardest choice. His story remains one of the most harrowing tales in rodeo history, a reminder of just how dangerous this sport can be and just how tough some men truly are. On March 24, 2000, under the bright lights of the arena in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the air was electric with anticipation. The Professional Bull Riders Bud Light Cup Series was in full swing, a brutal clash between the world's best cowboys and the fiercest bulls ever bred. Among those who stepped into the ring that night was Glenn Keeley, a 30-year-old Canadian bull rider from Alberta. He wasn't just another competitor, he was one of the best, ranked 9th in the world by points and 6th by earnings. With over a decade of experience, Glenn was at the height of his career, chasing greatness one 8-second ride at a time. But on this night, fate had placed him against Promised Land, a force of nature disguised as a bull. Promised Land was no ordinary opponent. The 1999 PBR Bull of the Year, he was a terrifying blend of power and unpredictability, a 2,000-pound juggernaut with no mercy for any man who dared mount him. Countless riders had failed to last against him, sent flying in mere seconds. But Glenn wasn't one to back down. He had faced dangerous bulls before. He was ready. The arena fell into a tense hush as Glenn settled onto the beast's back, his grip tightening around the bull rope. The gate exploded open, and chaos erupted. Promised Land launched forward like a cannonball, bucking violently, twisting mid-air, throwing his full weight into the fight. Glenn held on, muscles straining, his body moving with the bull's erratic movements. The seconds stretched, 4, 5, 6, until suddenly, with a savage twist, Promised Land sent him flying. Glenn crashed hard into the dirt, the impact jarring but not unfamiliar. He had taken countless falls before. He tried to roll away, to get back to his feet, but there was no time. Promised Land's massive hind legs came down like a sledgehammer, crushing Glenn's chest. A gasp swept through the crowd. The moment hung in the air, heavy and unbearable. Glenn lay still. Then, against all odds, he moved. The audience erupted in stunned relief as Glenn, battered and broken, somehow stood up. Assisted by the medical team, he walked out of the arena, even managing a joke with the staff. To those watching, it looked like just another brutal fall, another close call for a tough-as-nails cowboy. But behind the scenes, something was terribly wrong. By the time Glenn reached the University of New Mexico hospital, the situation had turned dire. He had suffered devastating internal injuries. His liver was lacerated, his body fighting a losing battle against the damage. At first, his vitals remained stable, offering a fleeting glimmer of hope. But as doctors rushed him into surgery, the horrifying truth became clear. The damage was far worse than anyone had realized. The bleeding was uncontrollable. Before the clock struck 10 p.m., Glenn Keeley was gone. The news spread like wildfire. A man in his prime, a cowboy chasing his dreams, was suddenly no more. It was the first high-profile bull riding death in North America in 6 years, a grim reminder of the unforgiving nature of the sport. Glenn's family knew these risks all too well. Years earlier, his brother Jason had been gored by a bull, left in a coma for 2 weeks, and yet Glenn had never hesitated. Bull riding wasn't just a sport for him, it was his purpose, his passion, his legacy. He had made a promise, to himself, to his family, that 2000 would be his final year in competition. He was planning to walk away. But on that night in Albuquerque, Glenn Keeley rode one last time. The rodeo continued the next day, but the atmosphere had changed. The riders wore memorial stickers on their vests, a silent tribute to the fallen cowboy. A press conference was held, addressing the tragic accident. Dr. Tandy Freeman, who had treated Glenn, delivered the devastating truth. His vitals were stable until surgeons saw the extent of the damage. By then, it was too late. He bled to death before they could save him. But Glenn's name was not forgotten. Today, his legacy endures. The Glenn Keeley Memorial Bull Riding event was established in his honor, alongside a scholarship fund to help young athletes chase their dreams. Every year, at the PBR World Finals, the best Canadian bull rider receives the Glenn Keeley Award, ensuring that his courage, resilience, and fighting spirit live on. Because Glenn Keeley wasn't just a cowboy, he was a legend. It was July 24, 2007, in Salt Lake City, Utah. The air was thick with anticipation as the days of 47 Rodeo, one of the most prestigious events in the country, was in full swing. Among the riders that night was 19-year-old Tag Elliott, a rising star from Thatcher, Utah. At just 19, he had already made a name for himself. The 2006 Utah High School Rodeo champion, the second-place finisher at the National College Rodeo Finals, and now ranked 24th in the world as a professional. This ride wasn't just another challenge. It was an opportunity to climb higher, to prove he belonged with the best. But fate had other plans. Tag had drawn Werewolf, a fitting name for a bull that was more monster than beast. A hulking, 1,500-pound force of pure aggression, known for unpredictable movements and a vicious streak that sent even seasoned riders crashing to the dirt. This wasn't just a test of skill, it was survival. The tension in the arena was suffocating as Tag climbed onto Werewolf's back, gripping the bull rope with the confidence of a man who had spent years chasing this very moment. The seconds dragged, the crowd fell silent, and then the chute blasted open. Werewolf erupted into the arena like an unleashed demon, kicking and twisting with raw, uncontainable fury. Tag barely had time to react before, crack, a sickening impact. Werewolf's horn struck Tag with unrelenting force, smashing into the right side of his face. The blow was devastating. His eye socket shattered. His jaw snapped like brittle wood. Teeth flew from his mouth as his body went limp, unconscious before he even hit the ground. The crowd's roar turned into a horrified silence. For an agonizing moment, Tag lay motionless in the dirt. No movement, no sign of life. The rodeo clowns sprinted in, forming a protective shield around him, waving frantically to distract the raging bull. Other cowboys rushed in, eyes wide with fear, because they knew. They had seen bad wrecks before, but this was different. In the stands, a man bolted from his seat. Chris Haim, an off-duty ambulance driver, had seen enough injuries to recognize a life-threatening situation. His instincts took over. He ran for the arena, yelling for the paramedics to bring the ambulance closer. Every second counted. Tag was rushed to LDS Hospital, his condition growing worse with every mile. The damage was beyond anything the doctors had anticipated. Every bone on the right side of his face was broken. His jaw and eye socket were obliterated. Most of his teeth were gone. And during emergency surgery, the nightmare worsened. Tag's heart stopped. Twice, doctors fought to bring him back. Twice, he hovered on the brink of death. For days, he drifted between unconsciousness and unbearable pain. He had no memory of the accident, no recollection of the moment his world changed forever. When he finally opened his eyes, reality came crashing down. His face was shattered, his body weak, his career hanging by a thread. The road ahead was brutal. 20 months, more than 20 surgeries. The doctors rebuilt his face piece by piece, but nothing could heal the deeper wounds, the doubts, the whispers that maybe, just maybe, this was the end of his bull riding days. But giving up, that was never an option. "This is my job. This is how I make a living," Tag said, his voice unwavering. He wasn't searching for a way out. He was waiting for one thing, the green light to ride again. His family never pressured him, never asked him to walk away. They stood by him through every surgery, every grueling day of recovery, every moment of pain. And when the time came, when the doctors finally cleared him to return to the sport that nearly took his life, Tag did the only thing he knew how to do. He got back on the bull. By 2009, he cautiously re-entered competition, determined to reclaim his place among the elite. He trained relentlessly, pushing his body beyond its limits, proving to himself and the world that he was still the cowboy he had always been. Even after an arm injury later slowed him down, Tag remained tied to the rodeo world, working on his ranch in Idaho, still a cowboy at heart. On December 11, 1994, the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas, Nevada, was electric with anticipation. It was the final night of the National Finals Rodeo, NFR, the ultimate battleground for the world's best bull riders. Among them was Brent Thurman, a 25-year-old rising star, already carving his name into the history of the sport. Thurman wasn't just another cowboy chasing a dream. He was a founding member of the Professional Bull Riders, PBR, and a fierce competitor known for his skill, determination, and love for the sport. But on this night, fate had other plans. As he prepared for his ride, an uncharacteristic unease lingered. He turned to Aaron Samas, a fellow rider who had previously faced the bull he was about to ride. "What do you think of Red Wolf?" he asked, his voice carrying a rare edge of uncertainty. The chute opened. Red Wolf exploded into the arena, bucking with unrelenting force. Thurman held tight, his body instinctively moving with the bull's powerful kicks and twists. The crowd roared as he hit 4 seconds, then 5. He was still in control. Then, everything changed. Thurman was thrown. Most riders know how to take a fall, how to roll away from danger, but this fall was different. His hand became tangled in his bull rope, a deadly mistake. Before he could break free, Red Wolf dragged him beneath its pounding hooves. Then, the fatal moment. 2,000 pounds of fury came crashing down onto the back of Thurman's head and neck. The arena fell silent. For a moment, a flicker of life. He lifted his head, as if trying to fight his way back, but the damage was catastrophic. His body went still. The Justin Sports Medicine team rushed in. EMTs worked frantically, loading him onto a stretcher and rushing him to University Medical Center. But the injuries, severe cranial and facial fractures, were beyond repair. Brent Thurman never regained consciousness. 6 days later, on December 17, 1994, the rodeo world received the devastating news. Brent Thurman was gone. His funeral at the Travis County Exposition Center in Austin, Texas, was a sorrowful gathering of family, friends, and fellow riders who struggled to say goodbye to a man who had once seemed unstoppable. But legends never truly die.